Okay, hopefully this will be the last segment of the lower inner firewall repair on this 914. As you can see, we have the part from Restoration Design. So let's open up the box and see how that looks. Oh, you just have to love these products from that company. I mean, trying to replicate that fabrication wise would have been really difficult. So note it has the indentations pressed into it. I think those are for strengthening. These are a couple pilot holes for the brake, emergency e-brake pull. I suspect those will have to be enlarged to get those like in little conduits. And then looks like they folded the top in all the right spots. So let's start test fitting this and marking it for spot welds. Got to drill a bunch of holes in it for spot welds. So first thing I've noticed is that this area here needs to be bent out to mate up with the inner longitudinal, right? So I'm going to mark that and bend it. Looks like about a 45-degree inwards. And at that point, the whole thing should slide in. So same thing on passenger side. I'll probably just do that in a vise instead of a metal brake, just because it's convenient. So I tried the metal brake and it wouldn't really fit because this bent metal on either side. So here's how I go about it. I just put it in a vise and basically start bending it over. And then I'll tap it on the backside with a ball peen hammer, right back like that, to get a sharper bend. And I've bent a lot of sheet metal doing this. It's not as clean as a metal brake. You'll have some little indentations from the ball peen hammer. But if it's on the back side, nobody will ever see that. On the front side, I wouldn't want to do it if it's like an exterior body component. You'd really have to doctor it up. So anyway, that's how I go about this process. All right, it's starting to slide in there nicely. I'm not there. This section has to go on the back side of the tunnel. That's going to be fun. And then on the driver's side, of course, we have to deal with these brake cables. I was debating cutting a rectangular section out just for a quick fitment, and then trimming the rectangular section around the little conduits and welding it back in. It'll be cleaner if I just drill those holes out, and I just hope they line up with the actual little conduits. I suspect those would probably bend a little to really nail that fitment down, but we're going to find out. I'm going to drill them out a ways to match the diameter of those tubes, and then I also have to clean those tubes up. I've got some remnant metal and that funny little bracket that holds a spring. That's part of the e-brake mechanism. I'll try to salvage that bracket. So got a little cleanup right there, and drill those out. So it looks like those brake conduits are going to kind of sort of line up. I think I drilled those out maybe 5/8. I noted that the material where they brazed it, it looks like it's been brazed because it's coppered colored. So all that surrounding metal, it was a little bit tough to clean it up. It wasn't a regular weld, I can tell you that. So instead of test fitting all the way, I think once I get this piece in behind the tunnel, I need to go ahead and go for it. It appears everything's lining up. You've got these little indentations. Let's check the up under here. Yep, that's gonna line up. So yeah, I think once I get it in there, I just need to go for it. So I'm gonna drill out for spot welds along the sides, along the top. Try to mimic what they did at the factory. Of course, the tunnel, I'll be welding through the original spot weld holes on the tunnel because it goes on the back side, right? And I also need to go ahead and prime the back side of this whole piece, because once I get it in there, would be really difficult to get any kind of primer in there. I've got these mostly drilled out. I'm going to leave some where I can put sheet metal screws to hold that against the existing metal. So there's no need to drill that out, especially if you're using self-tapping sheet metal screws. Mine unfortunately are not, so I'll have to drill a little pilot hole. Also, I think I'm going to wait on where it folds over the top of the long and see that fitment. I may just do a seam weld on that because it just seems like this area is not wide enough for a spot weld with that bend and everything. That may not match up closely to where the original metal went. We'll see. And I can always drill those once I put the piece in, if I decide to go ahead and do a spot weld. If I use the spot weld hole saw, I can just cut out the new metal. So okay, I'm gonna, important thing to do is on the back side, always clean up these burrs so you can get a tight fitment. The burrs that are left over from drilling the holes, clean those up, prime it, and then we'll fit it. Okay, as I'm fitting and using sheet metal screws, I'm also using clamps to pull this piece into position, especially on the ends here where it mates up with the longitudinal, and also the holes for the brake, emergency brake cables. I had to kind of enlarge them and also do some grinding on those tubes in order to make that fit to where I could get this side in the right spot. So it's a little bit of a process, but everything seems to be lining up. I'm probably going to have to get in there, and I still got some paint showing where those spot welds are going to be. I'm going to have to obliterate that. The rest of this is weld through primer. Just keep an eye on your alignment as you're pulling and using your sheet metal screws. Make sure everything stays flush. At one point I had to put a clamp up here to force the piece down because it was trying to bow up. So it's just a little bit of a process, and you know, as soon as I get it all lined up and tight, I'll start welding. All right, finally, this piece is in. Took some finagling to get it behind the tunnel, and also Actually had to pull the new piece towards the tunnel in a couple of spots. Guess it was kind of bowing, but welds came out okay. I mean, it's good and tight. I put a couple of seam welds just for extra assurance. It's not going to move around. And yeah, pleased with the results. So next thing is to move on to that rear floor pan. Now, so I'll be cleaning up the underside of the longs. Probably do a alignment, and also need to clean the front pans up and just see how that's gonna made up. But I think this is the end of the whole lower inner firewall, and look for subsequent videos on the floor pan.